Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hunter Salazar, of course, and today I'm joined by.
Dracul Von Craven.
Nice to have you here, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Cthulhu and Hastur. So I don't really have the same, perhaps connection to Cthulhu that you probably do. I'm more like really Hastur oriented. I've done a lot of channeling of him, but I guess we could just start with, what do you see Cthulhu as, and like, how did you really get into this current?
It like well, it was it had to lead me to the King in Yellow. And back when I was just getting into the occult and stuff, I was really heavy into Satanism. I learned about H.P. Lovecraft that way, and then the Necronomicon ended up popping up in my spiritual journeys, and I didn't I read it that like maybe once or twice, and then after for whatever reason it just kept coming back after I'd put it down, and and did this for years, and I never even used the Necronomicon, but it was still that link. And then after getting familiar with Lovecraft a little bit, I pretty much got involved with the Church of Cthulhu, First United Church of Cthulhu, and they ordained me. And some really crazy stuff started happening after that, and that's when Hastur started reaching out.
Would you like to talk about a couple of the Cthulhu experiences that kind of started happening after you were initiated as a priest?
The thing is, it wasn't even like initiation. It was just like, oh yeah, to sign this thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
because when I did it, it was like even though you would be technically like an ordained like minister, it is not like this grandiose kind of thing.
there's like no ceremony or anything like that.
No, nothing like that. Like it's like you print this thing out and you sign it. But the thing is that 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 action was significant enough to trigger spiritual things. And well, I was living in Odessa, Florida at the time. I was living with a girlfriend, and so I signed my name. It was almost like signing your life away kind of deal, you know. And it was weird because it's like when I signed it, it was like I felt this kind of like presence kind of deal. And I remember looking up the ceiling one day, and there's this watermark, and it was in the shape of an obelisk. It almost looked perfect, dude. Like I was like, what the fuck, and pretty much, I kind of took it as a sign, and then I started getting really hardcore into the mythos, started learning about the great old ones and the elder gods and stuff, and that's when I came across the King in Yellow, and pretty much after that, I started getting a couple signs because like not too long after that, the whole relationship that I had fell apart.
I've heard about that happening when you get like caught up in certain currents.
It happens. It happens, and it's like, but it happens for a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much for the last 2 years, I just kept studying on the mythos and the magic and stuff.
And so, do you feel like, so what are some books that you would recommend for anybody interested in like not just not necessarily just like it could be by H.P. Lovecraft, but more books that are about like it being magic and like how to do it and things like that, rather than it just being like a story, basically. Like, what are there some books that you would recommend?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Like going back to the Necronomicon, like even though it's very little, it was enough to spark interest. Because they would mention, even though some of the names would be off a little bit, like Hastur, even though it's pronounced Hastur in the Necronomicon, like it's spelled with an X, and instead of like Azathoth, you have Agathoth. And there was one more, and I can't remember it right offhand, but that's a good one to start. it doesn't really get into like mythos, magic kind of stuff, but it gives you kind of like this something to work with.
You feel like it's kind of like it helps you tap into the current, like
Yeah,
that transition kind of.
yeah. Another good one is Necronomicon Gnosis,
Oh, I don't
which
have.
had, huh?
Oh, I don't have that one. I haven't heard of that one. Interesting.
Yeah, that one is totally different than the Necronomicon. Like that one, that is written by Anzanath Mason. She's really big in the draconic the current, like do like a lot of like the draconic cliff off type stuff. Um, like this book also just kind of came in, out of nowhere into my life, and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds kind of interesting and stuff. And at the time, I was in the vampire community and stuff, and essentially where that came in for me is that there's some spirits like in the book that are like vampiric, but not necessarily like vampire. Um, well, kind of, because they have like the flame vampires of this, that, or the other, and those are pretty interesting. And the book is an interesting read altogether. What's another? Oh, Cthulhu Cult. That one.
Oh, is that what it's called? The book is called Cthulhu Cult.
Yeah, this one, like the first one was Necronomicon Gnosis. The Cthulhu Cult. It was probably like, even though Anton LaVey was the first person to use Cthulhu in ritual, pretty much Venger Satanis is the guy who wrote Cthulhu Cult. He was the first guy to really almost make this a religion, because he was hardcore. He's hardcore Satanist and stuff, but he made this group, the Cthulhu Cult. This was like early 2000s, and
Pretty recent for groups like this.
yeah, and it's kind of crazy how it just came. It was like this entity that is the mythos itself needed to be acknowledged. And good.
Oh, no, I just said that makes sense. So do you think that so I guess we could transition to Haster. So I think we were talking about this earlier, right? Where there's not a whole lot of books or ways that you can like methods for working with Haster. So and strangely enough, it seems very similar to me with a lot of like Reconstructionism in the Norse like magic and Norse tradition, stuff like that. Does it feel like we're trying to put pieces together? And do you think that channeling is really what we have to do in order to do this? Because I do a lot of channeling, and it's a lot of stuff that's just like inspiration. Like I really feel like I have a connection to Haster. Does that make sense? Do you feel like there's a big element?
Yes, I do actually, and it's not just like channeling. It's like it's just the work, like Crowley refers to the great work as pretty much, what this is, communing with what the King in Yellow is, getting to know this entity of essentially the new form of polytheism, because all these things, whether you want to call them Irregors or whatever, they kind of took a life unto themselves.
Yeah, that's another good point. Like, I like to what degree do you think these are egregores? Or like, I feel like I'm tapping into a dimension and the god of madness, but I mean, there's also the element of like how much of what I'm doing is me creating something. You know what I mean?
You know what? I think it's like equal parts of both, because it's like not just we're doing the work, but we're also tapping into this space and just human consciousness, because like these entities, these great old ones, they're like dark parts of this creation itself, You
Good
know,
point.
yeah, and they put so much emphasis into madness, especially in cosmicism, and but the thing is that I think madness is the vehicle to the gnosis. Like
It
you
does
reach,
feel that way.
yeah, you kind of reach out to something, and it kind of, it messes with you a little bit. But that's the thing. You got to mess with it for it to mess with you, and you become this, you know, how am I put it?
Do you feel like
Uh,
do you feel like we're tunnels to these things? Like we are the tunnels, maybe?
yeah, yeah, and like a lot of times too, like a personal revelation is that because even though like a lot of the King Yellow stuff doesn't revolve around the Necronomicon, like he's very still much a part of that, the Necronomicon, and I actually feel like um us as beings are actually a part of it as well. And like I can deep down inside is like I believe that we could find the Necronomicon, almost like this is darker version of the Akashic records.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
But
sense.
but I also believe that we're like the Necronomicon in a way. You know, we are the Necronomicon, and we are also the Mad Arab.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how like time and like the separation between things and energies. It's interesting how once you reach a certain level of realization that it all blends together and like it all blends together in a strange because like usually we grow up thinking like this is that, that is that, but when you start to see all these things blending, and I think that in madness itself, and it's kind of energy where everything's blending, but somehow it's also being processed. It's almost like you eventually are able to use your madness as energy by working with these beings and actually channel it into your magic and just it. I don't want to say it's like ordered chaos. It's more like you slowly realize how to use it, how to initiate it, and how to make it work for you. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, a lot of magic is like that, period.
Yeah.
Because like I found magic to be a chaotic energy, but not chaotic. You'd say like, oh yeah, that person's fucking chaos. Like,
Yeah.
but like when I say chaos, I like the chaos magician kind of definition of that. That is pretty much just like primordial. You know what I mean? It's like this raw energy that you harness and you use in either gnosis or sorcery.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, the oldest name for Odin that we have is Wodenaz, which means fury, or like kind of like not just but kind of like a maddened fury. You know what I mean? Like, and it feels like the most primordial form of Odin was that before it started to clarify and become something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, like, in regards to Haster, I know that this might appear on the Wall Rider project, or I might put it on a separate section. But what I guess I don't want to be too self-serving, but what is the vibe that you get from other parts of the Wall Rider project? Like, what are the feelings that you get, or was there some kind of connection made, anything like that?
Um, I just like I like your approach. I like your approach because there's nothing like 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 this out there at all. And I remember you in one of our conversations you talked about like the yellow path. And when I just heard that for the first time, I was like, "Ooh, that sounds mysterious." I like that, you know. And that's when I asked, like, "Is that a coin that is that a term that you coined? Are we using that?" And and um and to tell you the truth, like when I saw the videos um that you were doing, especially in creating the sigils, like, dude, I was like, oh yeah, that's my jam, you know. Yeah, because like
Well,
I
like as a chaos magician, you work with sigils a lot too, right?
yeah, and actually the first thing I did, um, doing anything with the chaotic current at all was actually I made something similar, and I totally forgot about that. And then like because when you made decision, I'm like, you know what? I kind of think I did something similar back in the day, and then it was like, duh, you made a chaos sphere. And you painted the red and black, and you can use it for rituals, and then I made that. I'm like, oh man, this guy's onto something. Like, I can vibe with this. I can vibe with this.
It's cool. It's cool when people from like different systems or don't do the exact same things know what each other is doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even like because I can almost guarantee my magic's probably different than yours, but like I bet if I saw some of your stuff, because like a lot of the jewelry you make, like I'm really like digging a lot of the jewelry you make, and I'm like, oh, I get this, like I get the vibe of it, and I get what it is, just intuitively, and I think that a lot of magic is tapping into that intuition, and I think that's why magicians in general kind of get each other in a way that like people in society would not get us, and we struggle to get them a lot of the times. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, of course, man. Like the Muggles, they're on their own current,
Yeah.
And so we both look at each other like we're weird,
Yeah. It almost feels like they're on a lit road, and then people like us kind of like go into the dark forests like off the sides of that road and go into like the paths that haven't been made yet. But I feel like I know a lot of people that work at Cthulhu that I get that vibe from, where it's like we are going out where people have not been, or where people have forgotten they've been before, and everybody feels like they're on the straight path, like that's well lit, but we're like really going off the sides and into realms that people haven't seen in a while. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, of course. And in fact, especially with the Cthulhu mythos, it's all about delving into kind of that darker side of just being, because you get these revelations, and some of these revelations aren't positive, especially if you take the accounts of all the Lovecraft characters. They all went through something pretty messed up, and to tell you the truth, working with this current is almost like a.
Do you feel like it's therapeutic, or maybe it's helping us process these experiences?
I believe it's shadow work.
Yeah.
I believe it's shadow work. And it is therapeutic, but to sometimes, especially with an entity like Cthulhu, like people like conceive Cthulhu as kind of evil, but he's not so much evil. He's just, his moral code isn't ours.
It's not familiar.
Yeah, and it can be mistaken for evil. So like, when something like an entity like Cthulhu needs something from you, it might not be in always the greatest of ways. It could shake something up pretty good, and you get all messed up. And
Yeah.
the thing is that eventually you work through it and you become stronger.
It's almost like another when you're forging a sword, another dip into the fire so that you can just rework the blade that is our spirit, I suppose.
We must be tempered.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll make more videos like this, but we're reaching the end of the amount of time that we have for this one. But we can talk about if we're going to do a part 2 right now or later or whatever. But first of all, I'd just like to thank you for coming to talk to me, and I really appreciate your insight.
Oh, thank you, man. Like, I'm actually so honored that you wanted to do this.
Yeah, excellent, man. It was good. It was good having you on the channel, and we'll make some more stuff very soon.
I'm excited.
Excellent.